I've always been someone that's gone against legacy in a way because similar to you, I've experienced death in my life a lot. My father and uncle both passed at 37. Grandfather passed a few months before his retirement. So death was something in my life, and I almost died when I was born, actually. So like death was something that was very prominent in my life, and so I never really thought of legacy. It was never really something I ever thought of, but I think a lot of people are trying to think of how people are gonna remember me rather than what am I actually living right now. So, h how has that kind of shaped your work, and what's that experience been like for you?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, the honest truth, it wasn't until, I was doing like death preparation work through my Buddhist faith. I was talking to one of my teachers about like learning the passages, learning the scriptures, and learning the rituals for the process of dying and for when someone's actually pronounced dead. 2 years before my mother died, I was intrigued by all this work, and through the Tibetan Buddhist lineage, the Vajrayana lineage that I practice in, there's so many rituals, James. There's so many things to do as someone is actively dying, and the moment that someone is pronounced dead, there's so many things that have to happen in order for, quote, someone to have um, a transference of consciousness from this body onto the next, or in between this life and the next. There's 49 days that we believe in, that is the bardos, which is when, depending on someone's karma or the weight of someone's goodness or their sort of unholy activity. This all this good and bad, happy or sad, requires like more context. So I hope everyone who's listening could have sort of, more of a paradoxical, nuanced, gray area understanding to this. But I'm using simplistic language because this is such a big topic, and we would need a lot of time to discourse on it. But in short, depending how you've lived your life during those 49 days from this life into the next, there's a lot of opportunity for you to be derailed into worse a worse reincarnation and a worse rebirth, than the one that you have now. So from the moment that someone is pronounced dead, you have to begin this, like, feverish prayers, like really effortful prayer, to make sure that someone does get reborn in a higher realm, in a higher form, a better circumstance that they had in this life, right? So I was learning about all this stuff, but learning conceptually. I was like studying, reading the text, talking to my teachers, and I was telling one of my mentors I want to go to the House of the Dying, Mother Teresa's House of the Dying in Kolkata in India, because I want to be with the dying. I just had this impulse, and my life has always been driven by this heart impulse where, like, you want to learn how to make it, go to India. It's like, why can't you just read a book like everybody else, or listen to a podcast or something? Why do you have to, board plane to India on your own when you are in a deep suicidal, depressive episode? But I live on that impulse. Anyways, I ended up not going to the House of the Dying, but I keep studying and reading about the stuff. But then the real transformation happened when my mother died. I was in a 30-day meditation retreat in Nepal with my boyfriend at the time and my sister. And we had left the monastery a week before it ended because I had conjunctivitis on both eyes. I had a lower back pain. I had torn my left ankle. I had chest pains. My whole body was collapsing, and psychologically I was really unstable, like no tolerance for stress, no tolerance for, I was irritable constantly. I had like very short fuse for life. Little did I know that that short fuse and all those physiological imbalances that were happening were preparation for the severance of me and my mom's human connection, so she died December 25th, 2022, and I collapsed. All of the training and the studying that I had done, I was the person at the hospital wailing over her dead body. I was the person where the nurses were telling me to shut up and stay quiet and stop embarrassing yourself. And family members were trying to fix me right away because I crumbled so profoundly. And it didn't end. It's 2.5 years in, and I'm still barely picking myself back up. And when you ask me, like, what doesn't get enough play, what do we need to talk about, I think death and dying and grief, it's we don't talk about it enough, and people don't get prepared for when someone dies. Like the amnesia, the brain fog, the psychotic break, the neurotic tendencies, the depressive, like all the things that come with grief from losing It's like losing an arm, or losing a leg, or losing even a more vital organ than that, body part than that. And yeah, I think this is when I think about what doesn't get talked about enough is that it's and this body of work, it's I've learned a term called death positive. When you're death positive, you are then befriending death and befriending these kind of conversations. Yeah.
So true. I'm so glad we started here because I think this is something that a lot of people, and I appreciate you sharing about your mom too. I know you have in the past as well. But that's like the most, I think, for every single person on the planet, whether they have a relationship with their mother directly or not, it's the most important relationship that you're ever going to have in your life in many ways. And so for you to lose that person regardless, I don't think time really heals all. I don't believe that because I don't think if you do the work, how can you heal if you experience the same thing over and over and over again, right? I mean, it's like the same kind of mindset of someone that is 70 years old and someone that's 20 years old. Someone that's 20 may have more knowledge than the person that's 70, more like actual experience in life if they went out of their way to create more experiences. And similar to what you said, like, why do you have to be the person that has to have those experiences? But I think it's so profound that you do because I think we all have a feeling of like wanting to be the monk that goes to a retreat for 10 days or 30 days, but doesn't have the courage or doesn't have the ability to do so. And I want to start there because I think that conversation alone is something that's really fascinating. You did a 10-day in India and then a 30-day in Nepal, right? Like those were your two.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the starting point.
What
11 years ago now. It's so crazy. It's been that long. Yeah.
What is there a difference between a 10-day and a 30-day? Like I know people have talked about Vipassana before in the podcast of going and doing that 10-day and it's an experience, but like
Yeah.
I don't think people really understand how much commitment you have to go to
Yeah.
have one of those experiences, especially outside of, you can go to California where you're at or wherever and have one of those experiences. But to go that far, like what was that like?
Yeah. I mean, look, and I want to just preface, I'm a little fanatical with like details sometimes. The Vipassana lineage is different than my lineage, right? So Vipassana 10 days is a different kind of practice than what we do in Mahayana Vajrayana Buddhism. What we do in the Vipassana training, the Vipassana sit, is it's essentially two kinds of practice, right? The shamatha, so breath awareness, and then the Vipassana body scan. And in the Mahayana Vajrayana hybrid of practice and lineage that I'm in, we then take a step further and we then start visualizing our own death, speaking to deities, like understanding karma and interdependence. So it's not that one is better than the other by no means, because all paths will lead you home as long as you have um, a fierce devotion to repeat the simplicity of these very basic practices. It will carry you all the way through the piercing of the veil. For me, I left the fashion industry in 2012. At the very end of 2012, I was forced bought out of the company that I had started with two friends when I was 23. So it was the beginning of my Saturn return, and I was in Florida. I had to leave New York because I didn't have any friends, didn't have any work. It was like such an upside down reality for me. Overnight, everything was gone. So then I go to Florida for about a year, and I'm researching Florida like on Google, basic, very like very much like a basic Jenny, like what is happiness, what is well-being, what is peace, like genuinely, like, because I thought the money and fame and celebrity friends were like the thing, and I had done all this in my early 20s, so I was like, okay, cool, I did the thing, but I'm still deeply depressed, very anxious, highly addicted, and I also felt like everybody else was like playing out this role of being well when I felt so unwell. I just felt like, what is this discrepancy between how I feel and how I perceive other people to be feeling? Little did I know, as soon as I arrived in India, that like people are just full of shit. Because the first words I heard from my teacher was, being human is painful. And I was like, oh my God, that's like the best thing I've ever heard ever. That being human is painful and everyone has basic goodness. These two teachings, that's what drove me. And there's a third truth that really solidified for me to become a Buddhist, growing up Catholic, that I'll share about in a bit. But those two things, being human is inherently inevitably painful. Ah, gosh, thank you for that realization, and thank you for that truth. It relaxed my nervous system in a massive way, more than anything else that I could ever done. But tracing it back to in Florida, researching, oh my God, I want to learn. It's everything's pointing, meditate, meditate, meditate. Everyone's, and it was pointing to two different lineages: the Vedic tradition, as we call Hindus, right? Because that's uh, Hindu as people, it's a British term that was like sort of, it's a colonial term used to speak about the Vedic tradition and Vedic practices, the Vedic faith. So the Vedic traditions and the Buddhist tradition were the ones that were I was being pointed to go study. And I was going to go, James, to the south of India to study with South Indian gurus. And my dad, who up until this moment, I had no idea he had any spiritual, Buddhist, philosophical know-how whatsoever. He's like, you should go to the north. You should go to the Himalayas. You should go study with the Dalai Lama. I was like, Dalai what? Like, what are you talking about? I look him up, and I'm sure you've had this experience before. And I look him up, and I was like, I know you. We know each other. This is not the first time I'm seeing you, and like, you have the answers that I need. And I'm having chills now saying this. So, anyways, I pack up my bags and I leave the spring of 2014 for a 10-day retreat in the north of India. And I arrived there, and I was deeply suicidal. I was really disconnected from my body, deeply disconnected from life. Like, really, just I was at a point where I had given up. And I said, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, then like I will literally unalive myself. I was really at that edge, like at that very border of like, I can't do this anymore. It's so painful to be alive. Nothing helps. And James, within day 5 of the retreat, it was brutal, the experience of sitting for 12 to 14 hours a day, in meditation, in these lectures, silent, in the Himalayas, right? It has this mystical allure. It has this like quality that like it's few places in the world hold that quality, where the trees feel like they're watching you back, where like you feel like, ooh, there's an eeriness to it. It's a little spooky, but it could also be like magical, not spooky as in bad, but spooky as in like there's something else here that I can't process through my senses, but I like know beyond the sense gates.
Mhm.
I do those 10 days. Day 5, I started to be like, oh my gosh, I've been fed a lie. I've been living a life of, I've been like so far away from the truth of being human and what it means to be in a human body and what life is about. I was, selling things to people in the magazine, selling things to people who don't need anything else. I was creating my vernacular was very sophisticated in being extravagant and glamorous and glitzy, and it was so much about money, power, fame, celebrity. How could I create deep separation between me and the other, which is like the opposite of what the spiritual path is about. It's about creating unity. It's about realizing that I don't exist without you. You don't exist without me. Sense of self is inherently interdependent. So there's no capital S or capital or lowercase s self. It's all a we. It's all a relational field. The more we can, dip into that, the more realize we are. But I was fed the immigrant dream, coming to America, have a lot of money, become famous, and have celebrity friends, and that's the gig. You made it. So I started to have these deep realization. I also realized how much hurt I had endured and never addressed, and how much hurt I had caused other people and never felt the pain and the guilt of having harmed other people. It was like such a profound moment of like deep shame, deep regret, and deep anger for both sides of being hurt and having hurt other people. And then we embark on day 7, 8, and 9. And those are the days that we're doing our death meditation. So meditating on our own death. And so that destroyed me in the best way possible.
Okay.
And yeah, my life completely changed after that. That's when I was like, oh my God. I had a little bit of money from the being bought out of the magazine. So I was just like, I'm just gonna this be disciplined practitioner about this path. I just want to learn how to become free. I had no plan on helping other people because my heart was still so cold and still so contracted that I had no natural inclination towards helping other people. And that's a natural thing that happens the more realized you become. Yeah.
Yeah, so deep. Oh, I love this. I find it really fascinating because at 19 you were deep in addiction in many ways, and so You went from this experience that most people think that they want until they experience it, right? Like having all of the physical things, having the relationships, having all of the things that you can tangibly see, to the exact opposite. And like you just went from extreme to extreme. So I could understand why you didn't have an inclination to be like, oh, I need to go and help other people. I need to still help myself. I'm still in the extreme of this, the opposite, the polar of what I was just experiencing. What was it
Yeah.
like going back into normal life after that experience alone, to realize that you probably didn't want to go back to what you were experiencing before? That's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely.
There's one little there's one really big thing that happened in between me finishing that retreat, hanging around in Dharamshala in McLeod Ganj, where the Dalai Lama lives, hearing that he was going to teach, rushing to the passport office, getting a stamp to be able to attending the teachings, and sitting there, James, with 200 other people. I was sitting with the Americans, so there's a group of 40. It's you're sectioned by country. Um, I'm sitting there with the Americans and some people from the retreat that just happened a few days earlier. Mind you, I finished the retreat. The night that it ended, I went to smoke some hash, drink some whiskey. I wasn't still, I wasn't on the journey. It took me to 2017, May 2017, for me to actually like really be like, okay, I do not need anything else, because it's not about being high. It's about being free. It's a Ram Dass, great teacher, spoke about that we're so seeking to distract ourselves that we want to be high, and it's fine to be high because it's so painful to be alive, that to be free is so difficult. But anyways, I'm sitting there, the Dalai Lama comes, he's talking, and it wasn't even about the words that he was speaking. It wasn't that the teachings were profound. It was about the presence that this man brought into this open room. 200 people, all of a sudden everything's in slow motion. Everything, I was like looking at my hands. I felt like I'd never looked at my hands in that way before. I could just see life in a whole nother way. The leaves were like dancing in the wind. I felt the sun like kissing my skin, and I felt like a little violated. It was just like, because I felt life for the first time in a way that I was like, and I was sober. I wasn't drinking or high, and I was just alive. I was alive for the first time in my life. And this is me. I was 28 at this point. I was alive for the first time. My mind was silent. I could feel my feelings as passing sensations. It was like the most psychedelic thing. Everybody around me was cute and good looking and beautiful and charming, and there was no flaws. There was like such a deep harmony, and everybody, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on right now? Did I take something? Was this something in the water? Is this something in the air? After the talk, I sit down for breakfast with a friend, and she's like, my darling, this is what it's like to be in the presence of a saint.
Mhm.
These saintly creatures, these saintly beings, we're far in between. We come to meet them and sit with them, and that's what they do. It's their presence heals, their presence relaxes, their presence brings us to realize that all the noise and all the ways that we make our problems worse, that we traumatize ourselves more than the trauma itself, that we make what's bad worse, it's all noise. When we sit with these saints, it relaxes us to realize, like, oh, wow, we've made things worse than they actually were. It's not to say that things aren't bad and things aren't tragic and traumatic. It's just we have become so wired to make things worse than they are. And we make our identity about that. And we make ourselves too special, more superior, because my trauma is worse than yours. And I am more messed up than you are. And my mom hurt me more than your mother hurt you. And it's this trauma competition, this trauma Olympics, right? Anyways, so that happened, James, this experience with the Dalai Lama. And then I was like, I want that power. That is what I want. I don't need to seek the money, the fame, the celebrities, the status. I want that. I want to be able to walk into a room and relax people, because up until this point, I would walk into rooms and I would make sure that people were unnerved, unsettled, because I was there. Wearing all black in my whole Rick Owens look, with the black hair, with the eyeliner, the whole thing, the fashion, the creative director, like very arrogant person that I was. I would make sure that my sort of arrogance was felt in the air. And I would pride myself in that, because there's so many movies and so much culture, really hallucinating us into this way that is something to be proud of, to be arrogant and to be cunty and to be a diva and to be like all of that's something that we celebrate people for, and it's so the opposite of liberation. So all this long answer to respond to a simple question, profound question you asked, what was it like coming back? I came back in a yellow taxi cab, right? Because there were no Ubers at that point. And I pull up to my sister's apartment in Soho in New York City on Broome Street. And um, I wave from the window of the cab up to the second floor window. She said to me, that wave, the way you waved at me, that wave told me everything I needed to know. How much you had let versions of yourself, all those behaviors and parts of yourself that you don't like, that causes harm, that has been hurt, you let those parts of yourself die in India, and you arrived in New York after the first trip to India, completely changed. And it's not that I was like completely changed, but something did massively change in me. And through that wave, she was like, "Oh, you've transformed." Yeah.
Don't ever be like, be as long-winded as you need to get to your answer, by the way. Like
Okay.
I love it. I'm fascinated by all this kind of stuff. I could talk about it all day. And I think one thing I want to touch on is the pathologizing that we have with our traumas is so massive because, like you said, it's like if my trauma is so complex that mine is more complex than yours, then I'm special, and it's ego in a way. It's like it's our. I think complexity is a way that our ego avoids responsibility because if I'm so special, then my solution isn't the same solution as yours, and I can't take responsibility for that. How am I supposed to take responsibility? I'm so special. And I think it's so prominent in our world today because social media has made it such a massive part of our identity to complain and to lean into our traumas. Your approach to overcoming trauma is really, I think, even just the nervous system from like the approaches that you take. What do you feel that people need to really accept about trauma? Like what's your controversial take on trauma? Do you have one?
My controversial take, gosh, that's such a good, edgy, like bite-size thing. I don't have a controversial take per se. I have many thoughts about it. Um, I think first and foremost, we have to accept that everyone will endure trauma. Being a human body is inherently traumatic to have a human experience. I think that's like really important to know, and that trauma is subjective. So, like, what is painful to you may have perhaps won't be painful to me. Yesterday, I was on a walk with one of my best friends, and he was talking about this tragically painful experience that he endured. And in my mind, I'm just like, you think this is traumatic, honey? And I'm supposed to be Sah D'Simone, and that's my best friend. And I was like, wow, that's traumatic. And so I'm tracking that. And this morning, I was telling my boyfriend, I was like, oh wow, like there's so much softening that has to happen for us to be able to just accept that it's an individual experience and everyone goes through trauma. And I think what we are, quote, calling trauma these days is a minor altercation with a barista or a friend or a partner or a parent. I think everything now is trauma. And because therapists are now on social media, um, so beautifully giving us language to things that to ways of to clusters of thoughts and to clusters of behaviors that we didn't have before. So now the DSM, sort of the therapeutic bible that pathologizes cluster of thinking and cluster of behaviors, is so readily available with ChatGPT and therapists as talking heads on social media. We can pathologize every single thing. And when we pathologize something, it lacks complexity, which means it lacks capacity, it lacks nuance. It lacks your capacity to say, "Oh wow, I do have this cluster of behaviors, this cluster of thinking is quote it's the criteria for this pathology." However, if I get too attached to that pathology, if I get too hung up on that identity, then you're missing the true realization that we're not who that's not who we are. That we are something much deeper, much more subtle. We are witnessing these clusters of events and phenomena passing, coming and going. And the more we can take a step back, the more we can sit behind the behind, you know, the more free you become. So, I have a few diagnoses, right? A complex PTSD, pure OCD, derealization, and depersonalization. I have, quote, 3 disorders. And I propagate them on social, and I talk about them for people to feel relaxed and feel like I can have authority. You can have authority. You can be a stand-up person. You can be a good person. You can be someone who's taking care of other people and taking care of yourself. And you still have suffering tendencies, because it's very natural. So it's not to say that I don't have a controversial take. I just think that, like, have the pathology, have the label, and then also know that it's impossible to walk up to a river and label this little bit of water that you just picked up. And that's what the human experience is like. That's what the human psyche, that's what the human spirit is like. There's no way for you to label this water is bad. When, like, it's past, it's gone. You're not, there's no, not even a way to, like, hold on to it. And if you do, like, overly identify with a pathology too closely, and you really allow it to become you, and you defend. This is the thing. If you defend your pathology, which means you're defending your identity that's been created, structured around it, then you're missing the opportunity to realize that, like, oh wow, this is a passing event. It doesn't define me. So when people call someone, oh, this person's toxic, or this person is whatever, plug in your label. It's lacking nuance. Like, no human being could be labeled with one word answer, with a one word label, with a few words. It's inherently impossible. That's I guess, the controversial thing I have to say, that it's inherently impossible to label someone with a few words, because being human is a verb, is a passing experience. There's nothing solid, fixed, independently happening from our own side. It's all relational, and it's all moving. And I say all this to also say this: have the pathology, have the diagnosis, work with your therapist, work with your psychiatrist, and also try all these other things. Right now in my house, I have a bottle of Lexapro. Right now, sitting right here by my door. Lexapro is an antidepressant. A few months ago, I was in a really deep, dark place. I talked to a psychiatrist, got the prescription. Have I started taking it? No, because I decided that running, meditating, changing the way I was eating, getting some blood work done, being deeper into my community, being of service, being with animals, being in nature, pottery, painting, all these solutions that are available to a lot of us. And because of a trauma-informed vernacular and training that I have, I do have to say, sometimes people don't have the resources to have all the mirage of solutions that I have, that taking the Lexapro to help with your anxiety, to help with your depression, to help with all the insanity of being human. It's the cheapest, quickest, best thing to do. So I just tell people, do it all. I never told my mom, stop chemotherapy and let's just drink green juice, but we have to do both: chemotherapy and green juice, meditation and Lexapro, like whatever. If you need to do an antidepressant or antipsychotic to help you navigate this insane experience, do both, but don't get hung up. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm bipolar. I am manic. I'm this, I'm that, and to round this up, I got selected one of the 15 mental health creators by Harvard for a mental health summit happening later this year. And the intersection of the summit is serious mental illness and homelessness. And my understanding of mental illness and serious mental illness has come from being educated and working with homeless youth.
Mhm.
So I think if there's anything I can say about this intersection is, like, we're all 5 challenging, quote, bad decisions away from being homeless. And someone with serious mental illness is one bad decision from being homeless. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, There's a lot of therapists who really, and this is maybe the controversial piece to say, and I can say this with grace because I train a lot of therapists, and I'm friends with some of the most prolific therapists in the world right now, and I'm so grateful for that relationship. And I think if you just studied psychology, psychotherapy, if you really just studied through a book and you didn't like go out of just the and you have to do all these thousands of hours, right? So you are working and learning and relating, right? There's a massive training that takes place. However, if you're not going to the depth of suffering, of the human suffering, then it's really hard for people to. I'm sitting outside, so there's bugs coming around.
Yeah, no worries.
It's really hard for you to actually understand the severity of fragmentation and how compromised the human psyche is. So, my invitation to everybody who is working in wellness, mental health, spirituality is try your very best to go into a homeless shelter, to go into an orphan center, to go into a refugee camp, to put yourself on the line. Because if you're protecting your identity and protecting your safety way too much and you still call yourself a healer, then it's the opposite to what's required to actually help people genuinely heal.
Yeah, so many things I want to touch on there. I think it's very powerful. I think it's weird because you'd think that the more information that we have, the better decisions that we can make. But the reality of it is that the more information that we have, the more difficult it is to make a decision on what path we should go down, because we have 25 different therapists telling us there's 25 different directions that we should go in. And it's like, you're right. The basic boring things that we want to avoid, like community and relationships and going and getting a sweat down and eating better and all these little things that we avoid, are the answer. It's like I said a minute ago. It's like complexity is how our ego avoids responsibility. If it's so difficult and there has to be like a specific route for me to go down, then all of these other things don't even matter. And it's like, no, they're like the foundation of what matters. Start there and then go from there, which I think is so powerful. You've worked with so many different people. You just talked about the homeless, and you've had like really deep experience with in hospitals and everything else. But I want to go a little bit deeper in like the places that you've been, because you were born and raised in Brazil, which I have to say, I was just in South America. I was in Peru, Chile, Argentina, and I wanted to go to Brazil, but I don't have a visa, so that was a unfortunate experience.
Yes, you have to go, honey.
And I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I was like, I had a flight booked and an Airbnb. I didn't even get my money back from my Airbnb. I was so committed to going. Trust me, I was ready to go. But you've been there. You talked about Florida for a while, L.A., New York, uh, India, and so many different places. Like, what places have really helped you expand as a person? Because I know for me, Hawaii, Peru, like the places that I've spent like some of the most time in my life have been really transformational in my evolution as a person. And I really don't think that people think enough about just like changing their environment and how massive that can really be, and like expanding as a person.
Yeah, the good question. And there's a saying in Buddhism about um, can you change your mind? Can you change your environment or can you change your mind? 99% of the time, you can change your mind, and you should work on changing your mind because that will help you to see miracles where there were none. And environment is profound. Like there are places in the world that hold such mystical healing qualities that are just like it's the most skeptic ever would can still touch it and feel and be like, oh shit, there's something profound here. It's inevitable. It's like unmistakable. It's there. I think honestly, I've been doing it 12 times, and to Nepal, I forgot how many times now, and to Bali, probably around the same amount of time. I think those three places, I think Bali, Nepal, and the north of India hold such profound experiences for me. Um, Nepal, Kathmandu, it's where I took refuge. It's where I met my guru. It's like where my life completely like took a shape and direction. I had a holy being see me in a whole nother way and give direction to my life and a belief that I didn't have in me. So I think instead of people traveling to a five-star hotel or an all-inclusive vacation or a boozy brunch kind of thing, or like saving money to go, get drunk or high, and no shame in the game because drugs and alcohol, unfortunately, if you really look from a very enlightened state, is compassionate, right? You're trying to reduce your suffering, so you do whatever it takes. The strategy, the path that you're going about it is wrong, toxic per se. But it's anyways, point is, I think if I could bless everybody to go um to a place would be like, actually, because India and Nepal is they're so hard too that it's like, oh, everybody go there. It's like it doesn't work. Peru, Hawaii. There's so many places in the world. I think wherever your heart feels called to go, save up your money and go. And I think a lot of people have looked at all my travel extensively, and we're like, oh, I'm gonna do that when I retire. I'm gonna do that when I save up some money. It's like, dude, like, pay less rent right now. Downsize your life, get rid of this fancy car, get rid of this apartment, get rid of all this shit in your closet you don't use. Take 3 months off and like go see the world. It will radically change your life.
It
So
100% will. I've spent a lot of time in South America. I'm actually leaving for Guatemala in about 2 weeks from now, and I love travel. It's been so transformational for me, really getting into experience an environment where I'm trying to learn Spanish. It's very difficult, and I know that I feel, but there's certain places where I felt more connected in Colombia than I have down the street from where I live, right? And even though it's a completely different experience, when you were talking about how like certain areas are like a felt sensation of how spiritual it is. I spent about a little bit more than 2 weeks in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and it's like you just can't deny it. It's so true on that. I really believe that. In your book, I found a lot of different statistics that were really fascinating and honestly very sad, to be completely honest. And
yeah,
one of them was 61% of young adults are lonely, and I think 2 out of 5 don't have meaningful relationships. And I think that's honestly conservative in the way that the world is right now. Obviously, social
yeah.
media has been a massive impact on that, but what do you feel like? What do you feel is driving that most? Let's take social media out of it because obviously that's like one of the biggest roles.
Before I jump in, I also just want to say one thing briefly about like where to go for the listener. Find someone who can do your astrocartography. So it's the astrology of the places in the world that are most resonant and most powerful for your liberation. If you want to find love, go to this place. If you want to find money, go to this place. If you want to develop spiritually, go to this place. Like, it's very clear, having gone to all these places multiple times, and then much later talking to an astrocartography person. I don't know if it's astrocartographer, but then being like, oh wow, these are the places that cracked me up in all these ways. So that's an interesting thing to do
Yes.
if you like to nerd out on the reason why places and resonate for some people and not for others. So that I want thank you for saying that those statistics are conservative. They're highly conservative. I think um, the driving force, my dear, really is we're just so disconnected from our bodies. We don't know how to read the cues for connection. We read a cue for connection as hunger. We read a cue for connection as anxiety, as depression, as whatever. Plug in your misreading of your body. We're so untrained in how to relate to our felt sense, and we always relate to our felt sense with a quick fix mindset. So we always relate to like the feeling for connection strikes in the body, and instead of picking up the phone, setting up a date, or actually going to the local coffee shop and lifting up your gaze and saying, "I like your shoes. What are you up to? Oh, nice, cool." We're going to pottery class or painting class or going to the runners club or the hiking club. Like, there's a million ways that we can connect, but instead of doing any of that, we rather watch Netflix. We watch rather masturbate, eat the food, order the food, anything but reach out for this physiological, psychological, and spiritual need for wellness. There's no way to do human without connection. It's impossible. But we have been so wired, hallucinated, indoctrinated to be so disconnected from our bodies that we can't read the physiological cue that connection shows up the same way that shows up as hunger and exhaustion and whatever, all the physical cues that we have for to be human, for doing human. Connection shows up in the same way. We just have forgotten how to read them. And the so that, I think that is the most foundational thing, and that doesn't even like, it's so sort of still kind of ephemeral for people. When I say this, they're like, oh yeah, cool, and they, tomorrow they're going to feel the connection cue coming up, the connection desire coming up, but they will still masturbate and eat the food and smoke the cigarette and drink the wine. They won't do the connection cue,
Yeah,
right?
I love that you say "do human," by the way. I don't remember who it was, but I feel like I've heard that saying multiple times on this podcast in the past. Because I love that phrase, and I also think too, it's so true. Like I think of when I travel and I'm in the airport, I'm making friends with all of the TSA, all of the people. Like I'm like I make it like a habit to try to make like every person smile that I can. It's like a game I almost play because it's fun and you initiate connection. A lot of people, especially in airports, are the most miserable people on the planet. So if you can do that, like you can do it in so many other areas. But people look at me like I'm crazy for doing that. And it's just like, but I try to do that everywhere I'm at. And I think it is really one of those things that you also said in the book too, social pain registers as physical pain. And I think we're so scared of rejection, scared of all of those kind of things that we hold ourselves back from experiencing. It's like, I think a lot of us are so fearful of experiencing real connection that we hold ourselves back from even trying it because we're so fearful of what happens if I give my all and I'm then rejected. It's such a difficult thing. That in itself and those statistics, were there any other statistics that were, like, just massive to you that you were so surprised by?
Yeah, thank you for bringing all this up too. I think I want to resurface to like how we started the conversation. I think we're all pretending that we're not gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So much so that we think, I will make the friends tomorrow. I will lift up my gaze and I will try to make someone laugh, or I'll connect with someone or compliment someone. I was in a podcast, very, very popular podcast, when the book came out, Spiritually Weed, the third book. And the podcast host, who is like a true genius, who's done this like very, very illustrious career in tech, asked me this question. So how do I compliment someone in an elevator? I was like, wait, what is it? Is this a is this a tricky question? Like, am I gonna? It's I don't know. Because I don't do rapid fire questions. Like, I just don't register with my neurospicy brain. It's just I can't compute. Um, and no, it was a genuine question. It was like, and I was just like, just take a deep breath, lift up your gaze in the elevator and say, I like your shoes, or I like your hair, or you look really nice. And just take another deep breath, and job is well done, you know? So I think we're just in a going back to the question, we're so prolific at pretending that we're not gonna die that we think that we can wait to do the hard thing, which is to connect, right? Um at the hospital during my medical chaplaincy training, where a medical chaplain is someone who offers spiritual and emotional support in hospitals. Historically, that position has been for someone who is from a Christian faith, and through the years, it's become something for every faith. It participates. Anyways, my role in there was to be a Buddhist medical chaplain intern at an amazing hospital, an amazing Jewish hospital here in Los Angeles when I was living in Los Angeles. This statistic is not in the book because it came after I had already turned in the book, which I think it's one that sort of illustrates the biggest problem of all, and something that we must work towards. It's the being in the rooms with people, right? I'm like, oh wow, where's your daughter? Like, you're pretty terminal. Like, things are on your way out. Like, oh, they're not coming. Where are your friends? Oh, there's always these like questions that were not answered, right? And I'll talk to the social worker, to the medical team, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a daughter, there's a kin, there's this, there's that, but like no one's coming. Oh, okay, cool. And more, I was like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? And then I realize, through doing my own research online and then talking to the medical team, it's not a made up statistic, and it's not, oh my gosh, like this is happening only in this hospital. This is pointing to a cultural phenomenon, an epidemic of loneliness, and the end result of that, which shows that 8 80% of patients, and elderly patients, obviously, 80% of elderly patients die alone in a hospital.
Yeah.
Like, that is mind blowing that, like, 80% of elderly people die alone. Like, wait, we're not supposed to go through the hardest thing in our lives alone. We're not supposed to. We're supposed to prioritize connection, so much so that we have a room of people around us praying in our left ear, whispering sweet words in our right ear, tending to our left feet and our right feet, and massaging our head and scenting the room. And there's flowers and there's song and there's, like, that we're just really working our way to creating our death in a way that is relaxing and peaceful and beautiful, in an event that we would want to attend. So that is the biggest statistic, is that, like, and some people say, oh no, that's way too high, it's more like 50 or 60%. I was like, no, 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 baby, I was in the room at one of the most powerful hospitals in the world. Like, and I'm talking, like, this is the hospital where celebrities go to give birth, where celebrities go to die. It's like a very, and obviously it's this hospital too, has is donates so much money to so many unhoused causes, that they actually take in a lot of unhoused people who have no money, who are then there. So you're seeing the entire demographic of very wealthy and very poor, and across the board, loneliness in in 80% of the rooms. I can't be the only person hold your hand while you're dying. I can't, because there's not enough chaplains. There's not enough the medical team. We must prioritize connection if we want to die a happy death. And I know people are like, a happy death. Yes, there's a way for us to arrive at the end with more relaxation and ease, and people ushering us into falling, quote, asleep for less time and waking up in another plane, but with curiosity. As Mary Oliver, the great poet, talks about. I'm paraphrasing something that was said in a poem, but it's, may I have curiosity about that dark cottage in the woods. And we don't have that. We're so holding on to pride and holding on to our hurt, and that we don't lift up and engage and connect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's what you started that with, of like, we're living, like we're not going to die, I think is more true than anything. Like, it is so accurate. We live with this idea of production over connection. We're thinking about, like, just we're trying to set our future self up for success for so long that we never get to that future self. And even if we do, we don't actually cherish it. And it's really unfortunate. And I think
You're so wise for being so young. Oh my goodness. How old are you, James?
guess.
I have no idea. You look so young. I can't tell. You're like
Okay.
either early 20s or like somehow you're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 21. Yeah, I say guess because most people, like, you never know. Some people may say mid 20s, early 20s, at teens at this point. Like, you never know.
You're so wise. Good job. Really good
Thank you.
job.
I
Yeah.
get to learn from people like yourself on this podcast that I'm very grateful for. And I think it is. I think the reason you say I'm wise is, I like I said, I almost died when I was born. I lost multiple family members at a really young age. Like, all of them were unexpected, and so I think the unexpected nature of life, of like losing people, not knowing when it was going to happen, why it happened, all of those kind of things really caused me to realize I don't want to live for tomorrow or live for the time in the future. I really want to live it now. And I think too, also experiencing people that have extreme wealth and still are unhappy, kind of like your experience, like having all the things that you think you want, and then you have those things and you realize, oh shit, like that's just it's not even the foundation. It's like it's just gravy. Like, it is just like the extra part that is, it's awesome. But if you don't feel good within yourself, I always say that if you can be as successful as anyone can see you as successful, but if you don't feel successful, or if you don't feel good about yourself at the end of the day, well, what does it really matter? I think one of the most difficult things that we live in the world today is that we care more about how we're seen by others than how we feel about ourselves. Does that resonate to be true for you?
Not anymore. But yeah, I think I mean, what was it? Did I hear that correctly? We care more about how we're perceived than how we feel. Was that what you said?
I think it's like we care more about how we're perceived by other people, or what we think other people are thinking of us. Of course, it's never accurate. Than we
Yeah.
do about like how we feel about ourselves. Like, I always think, like, all that matters is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself at the end of the day. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
not all, if there's so many things that matter in the world, but I think we cherish what we think other people think of us more than what we think of us. I think that's the kind of message I'm trying to say is we care so much about the production, doing things, becoming something to not even recognize all that we already are. I think we just dismiss ourselves in the pursuit to become something more. Maybe that makes more sense.
Yeah, true. I mean, I'm not in that rat race of it anymore. I was,
Yeah.
truth be told. I even through my humanitarian efforts, like there was always like a need to perform pretty and perform well and produce and show and let the world see how quote good I am because I didn't have direct contact with my own goodness. So I needed the external world to applaud me that I'm good enough so then I can feel like I'm good. But that's one of the most illusory and biggest lies is that behavior equates goodness. That behavior there's stages in the realization path. Like stage one is a duality, right? Like happy, sad, good, bad. I like you, I don't like you. You can be my friend, you can I will, you get my blessings, you don't get my blessings. This makes me happy, this makes me sad. And it's in stage two is the paradox, right? Where like someone could have bad behavior and still be a good person. Someone could cause pain and you could still love them. You're annoying and I still love you. You've hurt me and I can still love you. Um, my blessings are not restricted to only those who love me back. Stage number three is non-duality. It's the interdependence, interconnected of all of life. So we got to navigate these stages, you know. And the reason why I bring that up too, it's to sort of emphasize the benevolence. When we arrive at the non-dual state, it says that enlightened activity is all activity. That nothing is not enlightenment. You know, that everything is enlightenment, that every single thing, good, bad, happy, sad, trauma, or holy, beneficial, or unhealthy, it's all enlightened activity. But we can't get to this stage before we navigate duality, paradox, and then the non-dual state. So the reason why I bring this up is because the most what we're all trying to experience is a celebration that we're good. I think the humanity's core wound is that we're inherently bad, that there's something flawed, rotten, bad, disgusting, and untrustworthy about who we are at the core of our beings because of how we're colonized, indoctrinated, hallucinated. So all of the messaging that we have is to remind us, quotes, there's something bad or wrong or flawed about who we are at the core of our being. What the Buddha so profoundly thought is that there is that we have this in unstruck, unborn goodness at the base of our being. So if we continue with productivity and doing in hopes of people celebrating that we're good, and we hope that the more people celebrate that we're good, the more I'm going to realize that I'm good. That is a faulty lane that will never help you to have somatic realization, that gnosis, that deep, whoa, I know that I'm good, where like the past washes away, where like the disconnection and the despair falls away, or just kind of like, ah, it's okay. You won't get it from the outside in, you know? So, I think the productivity and the extractionist capitalistic approach to experiencing our goodness will never lead us to it. And then you have the industrial prison complex and the punitive justice system that says punish enough to the amount of the harm, and that is how you retain and restore your goodness. We know that the prison population is the most traumatized population on planet Earth, and with the highest ACE score and the most debilitating mental illness. And it's really hard for us to place blame on one person for a lineage of despair, for a lineage of abuse. But that's what our current system is based on, you know. Um, and this is kind of veering off from your original thought, but I just feel like it's important for us to understand what's happening socially. It's happening personally, and what happens personally happens socially. So it's not it's spirituality is inherently political, and politics is inherently spiritual because it's all interdependent. It's all happening in the same field that we exist in. So I think if I could leave people with one message is, um, do things that remind yourself that you're good,
Mm.
and forgive yourself for the harm you've caused yourself, forgive yourself for the harm you've caused other people. Truly go to that place of true softening, because if you truly have regret for how you've lived and you soften to that deep place of forgiveness, then you won't do those things again. You're going to become a better person. You're going to help to usher the world to a place of peace. And simultaneously, we know that suffering may never end, right? But still choose to be on the right side of history.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredible. I think that's kind of where I try to go with that because I think we're trying to find our goodness out in the world rather than recognizing it within ourselves. That's kind of the angle because I think many people are living in the illusion that they're going to find it somewhere in the world, somewhere out there, but instead of in there is kind of the message. Okay. Last question I ask every guest. It encapsulates what I want to do with this podcast. I think so much of what we're talking about here is we need to unlearn a lot of things that have been driving the way that we live our lives. So my question to you is what belief are you currently unlearning?
Oh, what belief I'm currently unlearning. I'm like, tell me something else, tell me something else. But what came up right away, like first thought, best thought, which is that I have to struggle to be well.
Mm,
So I'm like decolonizing my psyche from that I have to struggle to be well. I don't need to struggle to be well. I don't need to I don't need to struggle to be well. It's such a wiring from a lineage of refugees and immigrants and such a colorful trauma history. I don't need to be in chaos to find to be well. I can do it right here, painting in this very room that I'm in, talking to you.